If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. I ain't scared of nothing. That's what I yelled to my brother as I slammed the door to my car shut. Things have changed since then. I've changed. I remember his smirk, how he held out my jacket, the way he spouted off on an endless list of things I should be scared of. Skinwalkers, werewolves, oh my. He resented each one as a reason after reason as to why this is a stupid idea, saying, I still have time to back out. I roll my eyes, snatching my jacket from his grasp, slipping into my car and yelling that I'm not scared before speeding away towards the darkening outline of the mountains. They stood out stark against the setting sun like teeth. Boy, how I wish I listened. I was wrong. I'm scared. Let me back up a little. It all started 2 days ago. I was out of my mind depressed. Could barely get out of bed. Thought about killing myself. Just dying all the time. Enough's enough. One of the few friends I have suggested solo camping. Said it might clear my mind. The wilderness, the silence, the solitude would probably be good for me. He gave me a list of spots, some more isolated than others. I decide upon the most isolated one, which is about a 3-hour hike from the last campsite, far out in the Rocky Mountain National Forest. I remember his face, surprising acceptance. You sure? I nodded, saying nothing. Okay, I mean it's a pretty secluded place, especially for a first-time camper. He shrugged. But then again, it's a beautiful one. You'll definitely get some perspective there. And the night sky out there is insane. I thank him and turned to leave, but he spoke again. Don't let the forest spook you, okay? A word of advice from a veteran. Don't go out at night no matter what you hear. You might never be heard from again. Could be a bear or lion. Now the drive up the mountains was strangely soothing. The gently curving roads that wove their way through the trees, up the rocks were exciting to navigate. And soon, my mind was eased into a peaceful state. I've decided to forego electronics for this, even going as far as securing my phone in the glove box. I needed to be away from all of that, able to focus on now, rather than ruminate about past or future. I would have been gone for 5 days and 4 nights. Enough time for me to hopefully recuperate and reassess my life and what I'm doing with it. I soon descended into Est Park, driving through the picturesque town towards RMMP, willing myself not to stay at the Stanley instead. I find the entrance to the park with ease, continue to the closest lot to my campsite. Night is falling. I silently curse myself for being so late. I sat in my car for a good 30 minutes before deciding that it would be too risky hiking 3 hours in near pitch black darkness. There were 4 other tents set up in the lot I was at, with room for one more, and as soon as I set up my tent, the night passed comfortably. I was surrounded by chatting, laughing people, happy children who ran around screaming. A few of them offered me roasted hot dogs and whatnot, and beer. I filled my belly smiling. I was rolled up in my sleeping bag before the last night fades from the dying embers. The second night didn't go so smoothly. I woke up late, well rested, but still groggy. Took my time repacking my tent. I hesitated at first, wondering if I should just stay there, but at 3 PM, another family showed up with proof that they had reserved the site. So I gather up and setting off. Immediately I got lost. Navigating by only map and compass for the first time alone is much harder than it sounds. And the trees, they can be misleading, can turn you around, make you think you're on the right path when you're actually miles away from where you should be. Instead of me taking 3 hours to go to the site, it took me nearly twice that time, and I was swiftly losing what little light was left in the day. Now finally, I found the site, but before I breathed a sigh of relief, I slowly set up my tent, building a small fire in front. It was now dark. I was jumpy. Every sound I heard was seemingly magnified. Every shadow cast by the dim light of the fire, a menace. Spooked, I crawled into the tent, curling up into my bag, trying to will myself into sleep. After a while, I was dozing, about to drift off, when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of a foot crunching outside. My eyes now shot open, and I reached for my flashlight, but didn't turn it on. I waited. I heard the sound again. Someone or something was definitely walking around my tent, and it sounded like they, whatever they was, were trying to be quiet stealthily. Now this went on for hours in inconsistent bursts until I finally decided it was an animal, scavenging for the scraps or inspecting my tent. By dawn, I was dozing again, and the noise had finally stopped. I told myself I would sleep for an hour or two, giving myself time to rest up. I woke up disorientated, exhausted, and started to panic before remembering I was out camping, that I needed to start hiking back now. But when I exited the tent, I saw that the sun was already setting. To say I was upset would be an understatement. I hesitated for a moment, trying to decide what to do. I wanted to go home. I wanted to leave, see how far I could go out there. But deep down, I knew I'd instantly get lost and end up in a much worse situation. So I began collecting as much wood as I could to build a massive fire, preparing to hunker down for the night. The light from the sun seemed to disappear unfathomably fast. The third night was pretty problematic. I sat awake in my tent for hours after the sun went down waiting. I'd left the fire going for as long as the wood lasted. I know this isn't the best thing to do for camping, but I was improvising, and utterly terrified. The darkness around me seemed to crush the light from the fire, making it seem small, prophetic even, a tiny candle in a sea of shadows. For hours I sat there, listening, afraid. I finally realized that I'm being ridiculous, that what I heard the night before was nothing to fear, that my subconscious, my monkey mind was playing tricks on me, keeping me alert for nothing. So I now bundled up and laid down, and I heard it, softly at first, a footstep, then 2, 3, growing louder and bolder. I sat up and felt the size of my eyes increase. What was that? I had to know. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't. I was operating purely out of fear. I heard the noise. It sounded like something was running constantly around my tent. Suddenly, the side of my tent pushed in, as though someone was slapping it from the outside. "Hey," I yelled, scared out of my wits. "Hey, I'm here. What are you doing?" I tried to stand, tripping myself up in the sleeping bag in the process, slamming down, scrambling up, swiftly unzipping the flap, running outside with a red-tinted flashlight. I saw a shape scurry away and followed, and there, standing at the edge of the firelight, barely visible, was the silhouette of a person. They were standing with their backs towards me. Their arms were hanging in a strange position by their side, their head pointed away from me. I now took a step back. A branch cracks underneath me, seeming to startle them. "Hey," I said again. "What the hell, man?" And it boiled up. A sound turned into a scream. It was laughter. It echoed around me, rattling my skull. I ran, leaping into my tent, zipping it up behind me, curling into my sleeping bag, crying. And the world around me exploded, or rather imploded. The walls of the tent shook like hundreds of hands were slapping it, poking it or punching it. Outside, it sounded like dozens of people running around, shattering the silence. I don't know how or when I fell asleep. I think I fainted. Either way, I woke up the next day to a reddish glow encompassing my surroundings. I sat up and ran outside, looking around for proof of what I heard, but there was nothing. No footprints or handprints or anything disturbing at all. God, this is bad, I muttered to myself, throwing my things chaotically into my bag. I would leave today in the dark. I could not stay for another night. I was just starting to unpole the tent when I heard it. A sound in the distance, perhaps carried to me by the wind which was picking up around me. Help me. Oh God, please help me. I reacted more out of instinct than logic and began running towards the sound before realizing that in no way was I in a place to help whoever was screaming. Still, I tried to locate the source of the sound, following the voice for about 30 minutes. "Where are ye?" I yelled while looking around me through the maze of trees. "I'm here, where are ye?" Quickly, the screams transcended into a deep, unsettling laughter. Scared out of my mind, I ran and turned back the way I came. By some miracle, I made it back to the site, grabbed my pack, putting all of the poles of the tent away, thinking I should roll it up and carry it instead of neatly folding it. Now around me, the mountains loomed up like fangs, like I'm about to be swallowed. As I pulled each pole, the tent fell a little, but it was only on the third pole out of 6 that I realised it wasn't falling fully flat. Confused, I peered to the tent, and in terror I screamed. Something was inside, but not just anyone. It was me, sitting there, bone thin, a terrifying grin on my face. A single droplet of blood rolled down from each of my eyes. Instead of having blue irises, they're totally black. I jumped back, tripping over my own feet. Laughter rose around me as I scrambled up. I saw my hand that was not my hand reach out from the tent, followed swiftly by the other, then my head. My face that was not my face looked up at me, smiling, laughing. I screamed. I ran. I didn't even know if I was running the correct way. I couldn't even use the sun anymore for guidance since it's fully set. I ran without looking where I was going. I could feel the trees scratching up on me, pushing against me like they're holding me back for things that are yet to come. Suddenly, a light flashes in my face, and I run into something solid, something black, something that wraps around me. Immediately, I cowered, hiding my face in my hands. Oh God. Oh no, please go away. Hey, calm down, it's okay. You just scared me, what's wrong? I look up and into the worried blue eyes of a human face. The face of a middle-aged man, to be exact. He was holding me up. The flashlight he was using lay fallen at our feet, creating shadows now behind us. I look back in fear of what I might see, but there's nothing but trees swinging, slowly in the slight breeze. Hey, he said again, was that you screaming? I could not speak. I was terrified. Were you out here camping alone? I nodded and began crying. Hey, it's okay. Everyone can get spooked out here. Come on, my car's right over there, he said. I wiped my nose and blinked, finally saying, who are you? He glanced at me, saying, I'm a park ranger. But he didn't look like one. He was wearing a smooth black suit, black tie, white shirt, and his shoes are polished in leather, not hiking boots. Come on, he said again, taking my pack and swinging it onto his back. As he did so, his jacket slightly lifted up and I saw a SIG handgun strapped to his belt. Okay, I said, looking back behind me. How did you find me? He now shrugged and said, good hearing. We entered the small clearing and saw a matte black SUV with tinted windows, headlights flaring, engine in idle, parked in the middle of it. He popped the trunk, threw my bag in. I climbed to the passenger's side seat. He climbed into the driver's seat, saying, where do I need to be taken? I told him the lot number and we're on our way. After a few moments, He flipped the cubby in between us and pulls out a bag. "Corn nuts," he said, holding the bag up to me. I took it gratefully and began chomping away. "So you're a ranger?" He looked at me, then back to the road. I stare at him transfixed. He looked exhausted. His wood-coloured hair almost seemed like he'd been out here for too long. The SUV jerked to a sudden stop, and he let out a slow, low breath. His eyes narrowed and looks at me, then back at the dirt trail in front. I follow his gaze, feeling fear returning once again inside me. And there, in the middle of the road, was me. The me that was not me. Its limbs hung loosely as though they're broken, and a sickly smile appears on his face. It waved. The man looked back at me, then back at the thing that was not me, then at me. I met his gaze. "I do not get paid enough for this," he muttered, before slamming on the accelerator towards the thing. We both felt the impact. The car bounced over the body, and he kept on driving. But around us, in between the cars, in the darkness, laughter boils up. A maniacal and persistent laughter. We reached the lot in silence, bathed in the first light of the sun. The man beside me seemed to be in deep thought, distracted. I was still scared, but hopeful that whatever that thing was is now dead, crushed. The SUV comes to a slow stop, and the man pops a trunk and hops out. He now walks to the back and grabs my pack as I jumped out, handing it to me. I then take it, thanking him for everything. "No problem," he said. "All in a day or night's work." And his lips quiver as though he's about to smile. I turned to leave, but he spoke up again. "Hey, if you ever want to talk about what you saw, just call me." He gave me a card. I took it and looked down. It was matte black and only had a single number written on it. There's no area code. I began, but I heard the door slam and look up. He's already back in his car, waving and speeding away, back towards where he come from, towards that thing. I shoved the card in my pocket, climbing my card, breathing a sigh of relief. Now, I still haven't told anyone about what happened, even when they asked me why I refused to go camping again. Now every so often, I pull out the card, my fingers lingering over my phone, wondering if I should ever call, wondering who the man was, and if he'd really be able to explain or make sense of any of this to me. Alright, now this is a story I have not told in a long time. It happened to me October, 6 years ago. I've told 4 or 5 people since then. No one believed me. I decided to stop talking about it when someone filed an anonymous tip to the school psychologist. That was 4 years ago. I've had a lot of time to think about it since then, and I think I'm finally ready to post my story. It's about one weekend I spent in the Ochita National Forest. I'd been planning the trip for weeks. Made sure I had the weekend off work. I didn't make any plans. All of that stuff. I started buying supplies a week before I went. I was gonna go camping in the forest near my town. I've been camping before, when I was a little kid with my parents, but never as an adult, never by myself, and never in this forest. I was so excited. Now, I'm not an idiot. I took all the necessary precautions. I told a few of my friends where I was going, when I was gonna be there, and when I'm back. I told them that if I go missing, call the cops. I bought an extra phone battery, enough food and water to last a week. Heck, I even brought my 9mm that my dad gave me when I turned 18. Never shot a thing, but I figured it would at least scare off whatever the hell was gonna mess with me. Now I'm telling all of you this so you know that I'm not some dumb kid who decided he wanted to take a trip to the forest one day and just get scared because he saw a bear or something. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. I was prepared. Just not, well, for this. Alright, enough backstory. I'll get on with it. I left around 6 in the morning. It's an hour drive from my place, so I was expecting to get there around 7. Ended up getting there at 7:30. I didn't mind. It was a lovely day. Not a cloud in the sky. Great weather. So I was pretty content upon my arrival. I parked my car a ways from the forest in a little clearing off to the side of the road where I knew I'd find it. I gathered my things, have a snack, and headed off towards the forest. The next few hours are kind of boring, so I'll pass over them. All you need to know is that I made my way well into the forest, set up a camp, and started enjoying myself. Cooked myself lunch on the crummy campfire I made around noon. I watched a few birds dancing at each other. I even took a picture of some deers I saw with my phone. Couldn't get a good shot though, but at least it's proof I was there. Now something seemed off. You see, forests are normally kinda loud. Not like a city loud, but there's a constant background noise that's always going on. Rustling in bushes and leaves, birds chirping, animals prancing around. Now when I first get into the forest, this is all well and good, but the later it got, the sounds just started to go away. Not all at once. It took the better part of the day for me to notice, but the sounds slowly dissipated. Birds stopped chirping, bushes stopped rustling. I stopped seeing animals too. That's what made me notice. At first, around 4 in the afternoon, I realized that I hadn't seen a bird in a while. That unsettled me, truth be told, but I stilled myself and kept on enjoying the stay. I was feeling lonely. I mean, this was really with the quiet and everything. So I called up a friend and chatted with him till sundown. After that, I realised it's getting so late that I hung up, ate food, put out the fire, and after a final assessment of my surroundings, a look at the wondrous night sky, I crawled into my tent to sleep. I kept the 9mm right next to me. just in case, you know. Now, sleeping on the ground in the middle of a forest isn't that easy if you are not used to it, considering I hadn't done it since I was a child. I was having a little trouble. It was probably 2 hours after I lied down. I started hearing something in nature again. Now, if I had heard bushes rustling a few hours earlier, this would have been cause for a celebration. But anyone would have got creeped out if it's the only thing they'd hear all night. So I did what any rational human would have done. Clung onto my 9mm like my life depended on it. There was silence for a few minutes. The only thing I could hear was my own shaky breath. Then, the rhythmic sound of footsteps. 4 footsteps in a quick succession. No crunching of leaves or snapping of twigs. Just a steady beat. And it continues. It was getting louder. Close to my tent. Now I tried to peer through the fabric that separated me from nature, but I can't make out even a silhouette. I clutched a rifle harder, scared as any person would be. I remembered being sure that I would be safe though. Even bears will rarely attack camps unprovoked. But that natural human fear, that was overbearing, really making my mind begin to wander, and my hands shake. It stopped now, close to my tent, just outside of it. I could feel its presence near me. It was totally silent. I know it could have been a bear. It would be sniffing the tent right now if it were though. I knew it wasn't. I doubted it as a deer. They don't come out at night. Perhaps a wolf. They normally travel in packs. Even if it were a lone wolf, it wouldn't be a threat until I heard growling. But I hear nothing, just silence. And then it screeched. That's how I knew it was something that I'd never seen before. Nothing makes that kind of sound. It was like a sort of cross between a bird and a human, like the stuff you see in horror movies that possess people with their heads backwards make. That's when I let the fear take over. I fired the gun in its direction. Oh dear God, what a mistake. It screeched again and scratched at the tent, tearing through the fabric, leaving a huge gash in the side. That was my first look at it, if you could call it a look. I barely saw a silhouette through the hole in my tent, but I did see its long arms shredding the side of my tent. It was trying to get me. I fired the rifle again. I must have missed because it didn't even flinch. That was when the flight reflex took over. Now, I only wanted to run. I turned around and fiddled with the opening of the tent, trying to keep my eye on the beast attacking me, but also trying to secure my escape as fast as I possibly could. I did it. I dove out of the tent, breaking into a full sprint. Behind me, I hear the thing still tearing into my tent. I thought maybe it mistook its enemy or prey for the tent and not me. The relief did not last long. I wasn't far away from the tent when I heard its rhythmic prancing again. It was faster than me, gaining. If I tried to outrun it, I would get caught. Just then, It was either a moment of survivalist brilliance or suicidal stupidity. I stopped and drove back into a thick bush near me. I remembered so many predators in the forest rely on seeing movement more than anything. If I could stay still, it may not see me. The best decision of my life. It ran past me, stopping in the same place where I stopped. I didn't notice before I hid, but the spot just under an opening in the trees. A pillar of light penetrated the oppressive darkness in the moonlight. I can see my assailant now. It was pale, made even more so by the white of the moonlight, and that it's hairless. Thin, like it hadn't eaten in weeks. I wanted to say it looked almost human, but comparing it to the type is wrong. Its back is hunched over, making it look bigger than any human. It stands on all fours in a way that no person could. Its long legs are bent in a weird grotesque fashion that resembled a frog ready to leap. It circled around silently searching for me. I thought it was about to give up, but it threw its horrendous back upwards, straightened its legs, like a person. A horrific person. And then it looked at me. I saw it. I know it saw me. Nothing looks at you without seeing you. Not in the way this did, at least. I clutched the rifle close to my chest, terrified to use it or move. I now closed my eyes, awaiting the end. I opened my eyes again for 1 second. It's gone. I didn't move for the rest of the night. I fell asleep in the bush, cuddling my rifle, until finally being awoken by the sound of birds. Birds, thank God, birds. It was already daylight the next morning. I slowly stood up, waving my rifle to support me. I stumbled back to the camp to find my things mostly as I left them. My tent was unsalvageable, but I retrieved my backpack. Now for the entire trek back. I didn't stop looking around for that thing. I didn't let the gun leave my hands either. It wasn't until I got back that I finally relaxed. This was 6 years ago. I haven't went camping since, nor will I. Two days ago, I packed for my first camping trip. Even though I've been a little nervous, I'm also excited. Camping is very interesting, because I know a lot of you won't consider staying in a cabin in the woods camping. I get that. But I'm a city girl. I was born in one of the largest cities in the world, and lived there my entire life. The most time I spent amongst nature has been picnicking in Central Park. So to me, spending 10 days in a secluded cabin in the middle of the woods is basically camping. Ryder, on the other hand, my boyfriend, has been camping his entire life. We met 2 years ago when he first moved to the city from Pine Barrens in New Jersey. He grew up in the middle of the woods, so for him, city life was the big adjustment. On our first date, he told me all about life as a piney. I was taken by his adventurous nature and self-assuredness. He first moved to the city for a construction job. He misses the woods though, and its quietness. So I've already agreed to camp in, so I can experience this part of his life that he loves and cherishes. I really love Ryder, and want to be able to love this part of his lifestyle. But I have to confess that so far, things haven't been comfortable. I don't mean the bugs, or the creaky old mattresses. There's just some aspects of this whole camping thing that are seriously unnerving me. To start, the cabin he rented is really, seriously remote. We're somewhere in the Catskills. To be honest, I'm not even sure where. I let him navigate and drive, and didn't pay much attention. So we're about 3 hours out from Brooklyn. That's all I know. The studio we're staying in is very big, or to me, with a bedroom nook, small kitchen area, bathroom and living space. It's the only cabin for miles. He found it on Airbnb for a great price. When he told me about it, he said we'd have lots of fun with all the extra privacy. I felt excited by the twinkle in his eye. So anyway, we build a fire, and we look up at the stars, and they look different than what I've ever seen before. But what I hadn't considered was how eerie the isolation would feel. Now what's even more in this is that I can barely get a signal at all. If this post goes through, it's because I'm standing on the left side of the porch, holding my phone to the sky, and being granted a signal would be a miracle. Ryder likes it that way, the whole tiny house off the grid thing. He said we wouldn't have time to connect Wi-Fi, but the truth is, he seemed off since we arrived. The first night was fine. We got here, we unpacked, he built a fire, and we roasted some marshmallows and ate dinner. We enjoyed the aforementioned hanky-panky. Then we went to bed so we could get up and hike the next day. But then, something awoke us in the middle of the night. I woke up first, and in my groggy, sleepy state, I shook Ryder awake. He listened with me to what sounded like a hard scraping on the outside of the wall where the porch is. It really sounded as though someone was dragging a rake along the wood, over and over again. My heart was pounding on my chest. We were supposed to be completely alone out here. Why would someone be on the porch? I started to listen. I couldn't hear anything now. I was wishing we had a gun or something to protect us. I can't imagine, but worst thing come to worse, I knew we were unarmed. I whispered my fears to Ryder, who hushed me, getting out of bed, pulled on his jeans and crept over to the window. The second he peeked outside, the sound stops. I was so scared I was holding my breath. Then, to my horror, Ryder opened the door. Before I could even make a sound to protest, he stepped outside and let the door screen slam shut behind him. I laid in bed, clutching blankets to my chest, staring at his silhouette illuminated by the porch light. "There's nothing out here," he said to me. "Come back inside." I pleaded, feeling afraid to have even opened the door, but Ryder insisted on taking a look around the property. He instructed me to lock the door behind him before he stuttered off the porch. I did as I was told, despite being gripped with fear. I thought he'd be back in a minute at most, but instead, I spent the next 20 minutes petrified, straining to listen past the sound of crickets or any sign of him. I was afraid to look out the window or open the door. I know I sounded like a coward, and maybe I am, but please understand, I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. Finally, after the longest 20 minutes of my life, I heard him come up the steps and rap on the door. "It's me," he said, and although it sounded like him, there was a strange huskiness to his voice I did not recognize. I opened the door, and Ryder came inside, not bothering to glance at me as he shook his head. I locked the door and crawled in next to him. "Do you see anything?" "Obviously not. What do you think it was? Probably the wind or something." I laughed then, because the notion was so silly. I thought he was certainly joking, but the angry look on his face at the sound of my laugh clearly told me he wasn't. "You worry too much, you know that." He never spoke to me like this before, and his words honestly shocked me. I didn't know what to say. I felt so deeply wounded by his words. I understand that I might have been overreacting because I don't understand the wilderness, but I didn't think I was being that paranoid. I definitely didn't think my fearful reaction would invoke anger upon him. "I'm sorry." I tried to apologize, but he rolled over then. Unsure what else to say, I laid down and tried to sleep. He fell asleep rather quickly. I could tell from his deep, even weird breathing. I tossed and turned for about an hour, mind feeling nervous and uncomfortable. Finally, just as I drifted off, I heard another sound. At first I thought I was dreaming, but as I snapped awake, I realized it was a distant sound that seemed like it was coming from the woods behind our cabin. It took me a minute to recognize it as a voice, repeating the same thing over and over. I couldn't make out what it was saying. I expected just for it to slowly stop or be the wind, but I heard the word stop. What I realized though sent shivers down my spine. The voice sounded eerily like Ryder's. Now it only happened about 3 times and then vanished. I was absolutely paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to wake up Ryder again because 1, I was terrified of him getting more angry. And what if he didn't believe me though and thought I was being paranoid again? And 2, I was honestly really afraid now, and the thought of him going out again filled me with anxious thoughts of harm coming his way. I decided the best thing I could do was lie awake on guard, listen for danger, and if I heard something, concentrate, then awake Ryder. So I laid awake all night, playing Wi-Fi free games on my phone like solitaire, fighting my tired eyes. At last, when the strings of dawn began to light the edges of the curtains, I allowed myself to drift to sleep. I woke up about 3 hours later to an empty cabin. I could see that Ryder has fixated on something and was making himself breakfast, toast and jam. The remnants set out on the kitchen table. I pulled on my coat and boots, not bothering to change out on my plaid pajamas, stepping onto the porch. Ryder wasn't anywhere in sight, but there was a small fire going and some freshly chopped wood. I figured that he was probably going out to get firewood. I turned around to go back inside. That's when I saw it. The side of the cabin was covered in long, deep, fresh scratch marks. I don't know if I screamed or cried out, but suddenly I felt hands clutch my shoulders. I turned around ready to fight. It was only Ryder, who come up behind me. Crap. Did I scare you? He said, but his voice sounded teasing, but his face was stone and serious. Why didn't you wake me when you saw the scratch marks? What do you mean? He said. Now when I tell you that my stomach dropped in that moment, I'm not kidding. I felt a chill go through me. I couldn't believe he was acting like the scratches were no big deal. It's evidence that something was on our porch last night. Seriously, Ryder, the scratches. Hey, I'm pretty sure those were there before, nothing new. I then walked over to the wall, picked at the freshly chopped wood, pointed to the shavings on the deck. I began to argue with him, but he first dismissed me, then suddenly, anger's back. I watched a chillingly dark look come over him. I never saw him look at me or anyone that way before. His teeth clenched as he moved his jaw side to side, boring holes into me with his eyes. I'm getting really sick of you trying to ruin everything. Is anything I do good enough for you? What? I said, totally confused. I could not believe what he was saying. Guess this is what I get for thinking I could be able to enjoy something for once. Maybe with you, but no. It's always go out and do the big city stuff that the girl wants. You're so high maintenance, you know that. You take, but you never give. Once again, I was deeply wounded by his words. They cut to the bone. I really can't stress enough that he's never spoke to me like this before. He's always calm and sensitive and sweet. If he had these feelings of resent, I don't know why he'd been hiding them from me until now. Please, I swear it's not that. I was really freaking out. Could we at least maybe ride into town for the day? No, town's at least a 40-minute drive away. He looked furious now. I can't take your crap anymore. I'm going for a walk, he hollered, grabs the axe and storms off into the woods. That was 2 hours ago now, and I've been sitting on my porch waiting for him to come back. I can't reach him by phone because he left his phone in the cabin and we have no service. What he did take, however, are the keys to his truck. I'm terrified that something could happen to him out there and I've got no way of getting help. I'm just stranded here, utterly trapped until he returns. I'm wrecked with anxiety. I cannot eat, and I feel sick. I'm writing this in the hopes that someone can make sense of this.